started to make some like generative AI resume bullets, and I blew my mind. I was like, oh, this is way better than I thought it was. I just thought it was like trash because I've seen so much other technology produce garbage. And I was like, this is actually really good. And this was with I think it was the first release of GPT-3. Like you still had to get approved to get an API key. It was like hard. And I did it. And I immediately wrote our engineering team. I said, stop everything what we're doing. We need to add this to our product immediately. And in January of 2023, that date is accurate, almost 2 years ago, we started to add generative AI functionality. So generating resume bullets and professional summaries and all these things. And then that, we just leaned in heavily and said, yeah, this is a game changer. Like it aligns with our mission, which is sort of level the playing field. We had never in our wildest dreams envisioned that we'd have these services. We thought we'd have to build all this stuff ourselves from scratch at some point, which I had no idea how we do. So for us, it's just been an absolute game changer and enabler, and puts us on the same playing field with other big companies that have these abilities. We've had a total, I think, in the last, so in the first 3 years, we had 100,000 people sign up for Teal total. And in the last 2 years, we've had 1.9 million people sign up for Teal. So we're at about 2 million people ever. We've had 100,000 people pay for Teal Plus.
Hi, I'm Matt Levenhagen, founder of Unified Web Design, Unified Plugins, and your host of the Builders Podcast. Here on The Builders, our goal is to uncover the first principles behind building businesses, products, and services. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe or follow wherever you're listening. And if you find value in our content, a like, share, or review is always appreciated. Let's dive in and explore the roots of innovation and progress together. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another The Builders. Today, we are joined by Dave Fano. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Hey, Matt. Thanks so much for having me.
So Dave is the founder and CEO of Teal. And Teal is, what would you call it, an AI-based careers platform?
Yeah, we really think of it as like a AI career coach. It does a bit more than that, but that's probably the sort of simplest way to describe it.
Okay. All right. And as we do on The Builders, we're going to kind of dig into that story of how that was built. So this is what we would call a SaaS platform, I think, right? Which stands for
software as a service. It's I think software as a service is, I usually like software as a subscription. That's the big difference for us is it's oftentimes used in like a B2B context. There aren't a lot of like consumer SaaS, but we really are focused at consumers. We help consumers navigate their career, and it is technology. So it is software. It is a subscription, and it's, fully online, no humans involved. So I guess technically, yeah, it's like a B2C, D2C SaaS. Because we're not content also. If you think about like a lot of career things or education or courses or even something like masterclass, they're a subscription as well, but they're not really like productivity. They're about the content. And we really are about like creating tooling, digital tooling for the consumer.
Digital tooling for the consumer. So you worked for WeWork?
I did. Prior to Teal, I was an executive at WeWork for 4 years. I got there via acquisition when they bought a company that I co-founded in 2015. So I got to do the math there. So we were their first acquisition. And then from there, sort of, did a bunch of different things, but ran that company for 6 years prior to WeWork acquiring it.
No kidding. Oh, that's cool. That's awesome. So you built something before. You built, what was it like? What was that thing that they acquired?
Yeah, so a little bit of I'm trained as an architect. I was sort of an art kid, and I've always liked the sort of creative. I'm a designer, I'd say, like by education. And through my schooling, I realized I loved building and not buildings. Even though my dad was a builder and I grew up in the construction industry. So it's kind of what was known to me, but I've always loved making things. And so throughout schooling, I fell in love with digital technologies and sort of the pace that could happen at. I did work in architecture for a couple of years. But there I really leaned into the digital aspects of the field. There was a sort of up and coming evolution of CAD, which was called BIM, Building Information Modeling.
Yeah.
And sort of really gravitated towards that. I love this idea of building the building in the computer first, before you ever sort of, put anything in the field. So you could have a true virtual representation of the facility and save a bunch of money and save a bunch of time and efficiency. And so my consultancy focused on that. I left the firm and started a practice with two friends. We started two companies. One was like a sort of a consumer directory for finding services. We were lucky to work on a building for Google, and I got all into search and directories. This was 2008. And so we built that. And then I was like, how can I make some money? Because I don't know how to do that. So we started this consultancy. I was teaching at Columbia at the time. So I used some of my curriculum and started helping architecture firms better implement these tools. There's a software called Revit, which is like the evolution of AutoCAD, or sort of a different version. And so that company expanded. From there, we went on to do integrations. We were building software. We were doing like outsourced 3D modeling and production work. We were doing strategic management consulting kind of work. And then 3 years into that journey, we landed WeWork as a client. I think they had, I don't know, 6 or 7 buildings at the time. And Adam Newman, the CEO, said to me, "We're going to have 1,000 buildings one day." I was like, "Yeah, right, man." And we're going to do that in a few years. So we have to be really instrumented internally. We need great systems. We need great software. We need all sorts of things. So we worked with them as a consultancy for 3 years, took them to tens of buildings. And then, we thought we could have more impact if we operated from within the company instead of having to navigate other clients and find new business. And, said, look, let's just lean into this and be on the sort of owner side is the way we thought about it. And so me and the 62 other people at the company joined WeWork as their first acquisition in 2015.
Wow. Oh, that is cool. That's got to be a good feeling.
It was fun. It was lots of learnings. Definitely some things I do different, but no regrets.
Yeah. Yeah. So now you're at WeWork, and how long were you there after you got acquired?
I was at WeWork from 2015, the middle of 2015 to the end of 2019. So, somewhere between 3 and 4 years. And in that time, I, wore a lot of different hats. I was on the executive team the entire time, and grew an organization from a few hundred to over 4,000 globally.
Wow.
I started as chief product officer, and I was responsible for the physical and digital product. In that world, that meant all the real estate, given my architecture background, but then given my digital experiences, the app and all that kind of stuff. And as fast startups, go, that evolved and changed. Ultimately, we brought in someone way more experienced than me to do the digital products, but I did maintain my own systems and infrastructure for my rollout. Then, because I led sales and marketing at Case, which was the company that WeWork acquired, and we were selling into owners and sort of property managers to get bigger clients, I said, I think that's a huge potential for us with WeWork, and the enterprise business could be like the next move for us. The small business, I think, was a core part of the business, is really important, but the enterprise presented a big opportunity in terms of larger contracts, longer agreements, all sorts of really cool strategic opportunities. So I launched our enterprise business, and then from there, that led to other things and me launching other products. So when I left, I was the chief growth officer, and I was responsible for kind of all things real estate design and construction, and then sales and marketing. So I used to like to tell people my job is to build the buildings and fill the buildings.
Nice. Wow. That's an amazing, I just can't even imagine all the stories within that, but we're going to keep things moving along. So at some point, you leave, and did you leave with an idea, a problem to solve, or did you leave for other reasons and figure that out later?
So, I'd say I left with curiosities. I didn't leave. I was, unreasonably scared of my employment agreement. The company was always good to me. They didn't do anything that would make me think otherwise. But, I don't know, you just sort of get in your head in that. And it sort of led to a little bit of like why I'm doing what I'm doing now, this sort of power dynamic of the employee and the employer, and how uncomfortable it feels, whether it's real or warranted or not. It just feels you've got this thing with a whole lot of resources and a whole lot of people, and it's just you. right? And maybe
Right.
you have some financial resources, which luckily I did at the time, to pay for an employment lawyer to help me navigate something for all the what ifs. Or you can talk to friends if you have the right network and you have right sort of access to the right people. But a lot of people don't. And that got me thinking, like, I think technology can sort of level the playing field in a way, and help people feel a little more empowered as it relates to the power balance between the employee and the enterprise. And that was something I was intrigued by. And I just saw, like, as an executive, the kinds of things that would come up in the executive meeting, my own feelings of this 60-page employment agreement. But ultimately, I just had all these things I was really passionate and interested in and curiosities, but I kind of didn't let myself put pen to paper with any ideas as I sort of worked off the last 6 months of my employment agreement.
Yeah. And so then you leave, and that's when you start to put the pen to the paper and come up with an idea.
Exactly. There was like a couple of events that happened. Like after I left, the details of it were my wife got pregnant with our second daughter, and I took the full 16-week leave, which I don't think was really expected for, sort of top 5 executive in the company to do. But I didn't do it with my first daughter, and I sort of didn't feel good about that, and I wanted to do that this time. And so that sort of led to a series of things and sort of my scope diminishing, which I kind of understood that was the potential consequences of that. And so throughout that time, when I was taking my parental leave is when I started to think about things I could do. And then during that time, that was, I think my last day was like the last day of April of 2019. So I think, when I said I left at the end of 2018, roughly, beginning of 2019. So a little of like 3 years, or 4 years, whatever. I can't do the math.
Close enough.
But that's when things started to sort of, you can see it in the news. So, you could start to see, like, a lot of people didn't know what WeWork was until that time. And so I was out and I was sort of watching it. Obviously I was still employed, but I wasn't in the building. I still talked to friends. All of my scope had been transferred to other people. So I really wasn't involved, but I kind of watched the sort of wheels coming off the wagon a little bit. And so when I was like, okay, I'm done, I gave my resignation during my parental leave. So I was like, I'm not coming back. I don't, this was very stressful for me. I don't think I want to do this. The company did do a round of layoffs, and I sort of said, you know what? Let me jump in and be helpful. Right? I've hired a lot of people. I've reviewed a lot of resumes. I used to be a teacher. I've sort of advised and mentored. These are all people I personally hired that I convinced to leave great jobs to join this company. Let me jump in and help. And I ran like a little career fair, and that created a spark for me. I was like, okay, I think there's a here of, what I set out to do is like the next thing is going to do good and do well in that order. And I said, I think there's pain here. There's problems. There's solutions. There's room for innovation. I can also help people. And that's when I started to like shape ideas and put pencil to paper of like, what could this thing be?
Because, to build something, you first have to come up with the idea. So you're spending time just sitting and thinking. You had that time off. And now you're leaving, and now you got lots of time to think about the idea. I mean, like, what are the things you're thinking about at that point? The problems you're solving, or be able to, like you described, how'd you put it? Do better?
I knew that the next company I started, so I was pretty much sure I wasn't going to go work somewhere. I wanted to sort of take there was a couple like career experiences I wanted to build. I wanted to fundraise. My last companies were bootstrapped, and I was like, that's an experience I want to have under my belt as an ability for one day. I wanted to do like the venture thing. I saw it happen at WeWork, and I thought that was pretty interesting.
Okay.
So there's a couple experiences I wanted to gain. I wanted to try consumer again. Actually, I didn't start with that. That was sort of came later. But I knew I wasn't going to go get a job, that I was going to start something. And I wasn't entirely sure what it was, but those were some of the, and I knew when I did that, to answer your questions, I knew I wanted to do good and do well.
Do good.
So I wasn't
Do good
looking for a nonprofit. I want to make money, but I want to first and foremost make sure I'm helping people. So that was like a sort of added pressure that this business, and it doesn't have to be a B Corp, or B Corps are cool. No knock on B Corps, but it's like this. I want to show that you can make money and do good things.
I love that. That's what I was trying to remember. I think it's interesting because, the idea is the idea, but at the same time, you're analyzing yourself. Like, I don't want a job. This is the type of business I'm thinking, or the direction I want to take, or even how I'm going to fund it and all that stuff. I mean, you're thinking about all that stuff up front before you even start building the thing. And that's kind of your foundation and where you start from. And I think that's important. I think about my agency. Like, why did I start this agency? And I thought about all those things. Where have I been? What have I done? What did I enjoy doing? What do I want to do in the world? Like, how do I want to help people? And how am I going to accomplish that? And how am I, what's this next thing? And what does that look like? What do I see myself doing in 5 years and all that good stuff? And I think that's critical. And that's how it probably helps on the back end being successful with that idea. Because you have a good foundation and it's the right thing for you, right?
I think a lot of people conflate building a product with building a business. And they're very different. You can make a product and that's become easier and easier and easier to do. But if you want to build a business, you have to be compelled by that problem you're solving, but also understand that it has to have some sort of commercial lens to it. Right. It's got to make money. So it's got to be a problem that other people have also, just not an infatuation of your own. And that you can commercialize and you can go to market. And, that I wish I learned that earlier in my life. But, I've had a fair number of failures and I tried a consumer thing and, had to return money to investors and figure out a way to get that to them. And so I just kind of like learned that I couldn't just pursue my musings, that it had to sort of check a bunch of these boxes, but it also needed to be compelling enough to me that I wanted to get up and do it every day. Right. So it's solving for a lot, but I think a lot of people rush into it. They're just like, I want to start a company. It's like, that's just not enough of a reason to do it, because there are a lot of days where you just don't want to do it. And you can shut it down. Also, I think a lot of people overthink a lot of these things. I like to say, leverage, sort of referencing the Jeff Bezos two-way door things. I think a lot of decisions in life are two-way doors. We sort of convince ourselves they're one-way doors. I actually think there's very few one-way doors. But still, you want to make sure you're going to give this a real try. And once you take investor money, you've got other kind of commitments, reputational, beyond just financial. You want to do good by the people that trusted you with their investments. Sure.
Okay. So, the next step, what is the next step? So we're building the platform now, or the product itself, the software, how does that develop? Like, let's put ourselves in the shoes of somebody that's listening to this and be like, this sounds really cool. Okay. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to figure this stuff out, what I want to do, but now I got to figure out what I'm going to build. So what's that process look like?
I intentionally slowed that down, probably to a lot of the people that were working with me at the beginning's frustration. I didn't let us build. Because I've built before, and I just thought our problem is we don't have enough features. Just toss another feature on there, and that'll fix it. And that just makes it more complicated and more confusing. And so I really wanted us to sort of live in the problem. So what we started doing was, two things, there's this saying, it's like first-time founders focus on product, second-time founders focus on distribution. So I was kind of in that camp. I was like, you know what? I'm not how's this thing going to get to market? If I can't get people to use it, it doesn't matter how good it is. And sure, there's like the 1 in a million product that's so good that the whole world talks about it, but I don't think that's what happens the majority of the time. You need to have a go-to-market, and you have to have an understanding of like how you're going to acquire customers. And so I started thinking about the career. and how you can help people from the day they start thinking about getting a job to the day they retire. That's a boil the ocean kind of problem. And so I said, where is there pain? Where is there so much pain that people will change behavior? Because that's one of the things I learned in the other company was called Who By You that I started when I started Case, which was like a social directory to find recommendations. The thing is, people just didn't do that often enough. The pain wasn't high, so they would just revert back. Like restaurants you go to every weekend. So you go to a Yelp or you go to a whatever. But like for an accountant, you need that once a year. You either have the one you have or you just like text your friends you trust. And so there wasn't enough pain to actually get. So it was like a great idea. We built phenomenal technology. It was super cool. No one used it. No one knew it existed. For a number of reasons. But so I really focused on that. And so I said, when I looked at the career, I said, where's their pain? Where's their precedent? Where's their existing behavior? And so that's when I honed in on job search. I was like, there's extrinsic motivators, right? You got to make a resume. You got to interview. These aren't nice to haves. These are need to haves.
Right.
I have to think if your product, people like talk about in the product world, like pain pills or probiotics, like sure, you should take probiotics, but like when you got a headache, you reach for that Advil. And so it's like, they say like build Advil, don't build probiotics. And so it's like, where's that pain? Where's that pain that I could make a product for that people would comfortably pull money out of their pocket? And I don't really believe in surveys. I was like, I need a credit card form and the proof that someone's like willing to pull out their money. So what I did was I created what I called a career agent, and we would job search for people on their behalf. We would do everything by hand. We would look for jobs for them on the various job boards. We would write their resume for them. We would apply to jobs online for them. Wow. We would do the interview prep for them. Obviously, we couldn't do the interviews for them. And little by this is where we learned, and that happened incrementally. I'd just say, this is the offering. Actually, I'll just find jobs for people. And they wouldn't look at them and they wouldn't apply. Fine, I'll apply for them. Right. And I got to see all of these. I got to see the reality of it because people say one thing and they do another. And I think in certain categories of business, you really need to be mindful of where the real action is, the sort of 5 whys, digging in. And this, there was a lot of complexities on this category. It's like people didn't apply. They wanted a job and they wanted to grow, but they didn't want to apply because they didn't want to face the potential rejection. So to avoid that possibility of discomfort, they would just not do it. So like, okay, cool. I'll apply for it for you. And I'll make a separate email address and you won't even see when you get rejected. I'll just let you know on the ones you got to move forward on. And so by doing that and walking in our customers' shoes and living it, we could then see where were there these opportunities to create product. What were the real pains? What were the things that were super uncomfortable? What were the things that they struggled with? And then, plan got derailed because then COVID started. And we hadn't built much tech yet. And so things got all sorts of wonky. But luckily we had raised money. I think I had 50 to 100 people paying me $200 a month to essentially job search on their behalf. So I had some like proof, like people will pay for this.
Right. Yeah.
And then I built a whole deck and presentation on like the product we were about to build, but then COVID hit and gave us a little bit of a curveball. But that was my like initiation process to really understand the problem and the pains of the users.
That's fascinating. That's like the minimal viable. Like you don't even have the software yet. You don't even have the solution. Excuse the interruption, but I'd like to take a quick moment to thank the sponsors of the Builders Podcast, Unified Web Design and Unified Plugins. At Unified Web Design, we specialize in crafting custom websites and providing comprehensive design and development solutions to help businesses build a strong online presence. Unified Plugins offers a suite of WordPress tools designed to help you create beautiful websites, enhance functionality, and drive conversions. Explore how these services can elevate your digital projects by visiting unifiedwebdesign.com and unifiedplugins.com. Now back to our program. I'm going to be the solution for the moment, and I'm going to do this for them. So you really see the nuts and bolts of how they see things, how there's like the psychology behind it, and just figuring out all those little pieces. And now you can build the solution.
And we use some like no code tools, so we'd use like Airtable or Typeform.
Okay, so very simple.
Yeah, it's like simple little automation. Zapier was just coming up at the time. So
Right.
like, we were doing stuff to automate it, but I wasn't like hiring engineers to put code in and, actually build software that's a bit harder to change and, taking some real positions. So it was very malleable.
That's actually pretty cool because in this day and age, you have so many tools like Zapier and stuff that you can kind of piecemeal a solution together before you build an actual, whatever enterprise grade thing that's custom from the ground up. You can actually just put a bunch of things together, maybe some project management system and like, let's say this little click up, a little bit of Zapier, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And boom, you got yourself something. There's still a lot of manual in there probably, but you can test it out, test the idea. And that's key to be able to have a way to validate that idea before you even put a lot of time into building it. And you got cash flow already.
And see if someone will pay, right?
Yeah.
I feel like one of my learnings was I was too focused on revenue because I'm not bootstrapped. I have venture. And so part of having venture capital is the ability to take bigger bets and learn. But someone paying is great friction to understand if they truly value the offering.
Sure.
But I got a little bit distracted by just trying to produce revenue and grow a revenue when I didn't really have like the product market fit yet. So in terms of the self-serving digital product, there's definitely a product that could have powered with humans that was like a concierge job search, but I also didn't want to build that, right? I didn't want to, there's precedent for very expensive career coaching and resume writing. And I wouldn't have raised venture capital for that. So I knew it was a digital offering. I just needed to learn. But I probably kept that going too long. We ended up running these like coaching cohorts to help all the people that got laid off during COVID. And it probably delayed our like real digital product development by 18 months because we got a bit distracted. Again, we learned a ton and it's worked out all right for us, but we probably let it go too long.
Okay. So I'm curious. So you said you got funding, you got people to invest in this. Where do you do that? Like somebody that doesn't know, like, okay, I got a big idea. Who's going to be interested in this idea?
Yeah. So, fundraising is a whole world in and of itself. I got to see, what I would say is probably one of the best raisers of capital in our lifetime, and Adam Newman. He's very good at that. And it was at a different scale and a different level. And so, it's a lot of it is network, it's idea, it's opportunity. At the end of the day, these are venture capitalists. So there's lots of ways to raise money. I'm not going to sort of cover all of them. There's debt, there's friends and family, and there's just a traditional VC. And there's different stages of VCs. There's pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B, growth equity, things like that. So I was in New York at the time. So obviously being in one of the sort of centers where there's more venture capital is helpful. Not a requirement. I'd say in a post-COVID world, that's probably eased up a bit. But, you ultimately they're the stewards of larger limited partners capital. And so their promise to them is to try to grow that capital more so than just like putting it in the stock market. So you need to present a compelling idea that can be what they would call a fund returner, right? Like every investment in their mind needs to be a fund returner. So it's got to be big, like very big. It's got to be a business that will at some point exit, at least show the potential of. A lot of them fail, right? By definition, it's a high stakes game, but they take lots of shots on goal. But if they don't believe that this shot on goal has the potential to exit for $1 billion by going public or getting acquired, it's just not a shot they're going to take. So you need to build a compelling vision and believe in it yourself also. This isn't just about storytelling. You have to have the ambition to build a company that is as big as Google one day. And you have to be able to paint that picture. You got to believe that picture. And then go and convince people that investing in your company will deliver those kinds of returns for them. And, there's different ways to tackle that and how you sort of prove that belief. You can have a working prototype. In my case, it's like, look, I've been doing this for a couple months. I got a bunch of people to pay me $200 a month. They clearly have pain for it. They're paying, they're doing it. It's very early. This is my reputation. This is what I've done. Here's my career history. Here's my track record of success. I've built companies and sold them before, and it's all these things to build a person's confidence and belief in you that you're going to deliver. And it's a very sort of simplified version of it, but at its core, that's really what it's about.
Sure. And that makes sense. Now, how do you, it sounds like you were getting paid the $200 a month or whatever before you even went to get the capital.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, I was fortunate that I sold the company to WeWork and I was able to self-fund. So the first bits of the business, I think so people, I'm not a very shy person. I tend to be pretty transparent. I put in $250,000 of my own money to sort of run the first parts of the company and hire people. I did a lot of it myself. I'm pretty technical, but I brought on some people to help me because, again, I really believe this was going to be big. It wasn't just like a hobby. I was like, hey, I'm going to be the first investor in this thing because I think it's going to be huge. And I was writing angel investment checks into other startups. And I was like, let me write the biggest check into my own startup.
Sure.
I have the most control of it. And so I put in some of my own money and we started to build it up and do it myself. And that enabled me to, pay some people and hire some people. And also it showed that this guy really believes in this himself. Like he's going to work hard to grow this thing to be a big company. So that was my sort of seed capital, was my own money.
Makes sense. Yeah. And obviously some of that goes to marketing and getting the first buyers in.
100%.
So, yeah. And then just kind of fast forward a little bit. So the building so you built this, obviously you're building a team already. So you did right off the bat, did you hire somebody in tech to help you actually build the software eventually, and which you must have today?
Yeah. So, this is, the benefit of experience and having a network. I like to tell people one of their best career assets is their network and their relationships. 100%. So it was a combination of things. One of the first people I called is Eric Martin. He was the head of community at Reddit. He was like the number 5 employee. And then he came over to WeWork. He's one of the smartest, nicest people I've ever met. And I knew he was passionate about this problem. And so I called him up and said, hey, you want to help me crack this? I don't know what it is. I was a little bit based on his credentials, but also I just think he's super smart and a good person. And I wanted to be around people like that. So he said, sure, sign me up. Some tech friends, Lara, who's still at the company. Eric's gone on to do other very cool things, but who's someone I trusted who worked with me at WeWork, who had a lot of career development experience. And I said, I'm going to need your knowledge. Come join and help. And you sort of get the band back together in a way of people you trust in those early days. It's going to be really hard, and I need people I trust, and we can hit the ground running quickly at the very beginning. And then as time goes on and the company has more resources, you can be a little bit more deliberate about how you hire and the experiences and technical experiences, sort of attitude, aptitude, different voices at the table. Obviously my perspective is very specific as so I want other perspectives on how to grow this thing and how other people grow their career. And, so now our company is very different now. Today we're 26 people with all sorts of different experience, people that I had never worked with before that applied online to our website. But those in the early days, you sort of tap the people that you trust.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, networks are so important. Yeah, in any business, even my agency, I got a good head start because I knew people. Either with so that's awesome. So now you've built this. So how does the software develop itself? You got the right people on the bus, right? You got the right people in the right seats, to come in for this startup to start building something. And how do you decide what the tech's going to look like? How do you build? And this could be a long conversation. We won't be that long. Let's try to condense it a little bit. But how does that build? How does someone build a piece like a SaaS soft? Do you got to decide on the technologies? Do you worry about that? Or you just, how do you decide on the right technologies and how to build this thing that's going to be, because you got to think about longevity. Are we going to choose the right things today and architect it in a way that's going to do what you need today, but it's also scalable and extendable long term? I mean, how does that look like? Just tell us a little bit about that.
So I think one of the things about building technology is from the get-go having a comfort that a lot of it's going to get thrown away. And you're optimizing for learning. Like, how fast can you learn? You know, whenever I debate with people, like, what about this thing that is going to be this big? I said, we'll be lucky to have that problem. I hope we have that problem.
Right.
You know, we have to earn our right to have that problem.
To fail or to,
we haven't earned the right to even think about that yet. That's a bit sort of arrogant of us to think that the day when we have 10 million users, so we got a long ways to go there. It's like, we can't assume that, right? Because it's really important when you're building kind of technology like this. Anything can happen, and getting customers is tricky. You have new competitors every day, so especially at our stage, you know, if you're a publicly traded company and you're profitable, you know, that's a different story. You can plan on a different kind of horizon, but especially in these early stages, it's like, look, tomorrow's not guaranteed. We don't even know what's working yet. So I definitely think there's a pre-product market fit and a post-product market fit attitude that's critical in how you plan. And you really need to, pre-product market fit, need to be learning. You need to be optimizing for learning. And you can't. And so, you know, in our case, the people that I knew that built the tech was part of my tech team at Case. They happen to be in Uruguay. And I said, guys, let's just build this. Here's the idea. I'm not an engineer, so build it however you want. They happened to choose a Java-based stack called Kotlin, and they did a front end with something else. And then, you know, starting to break down a little bit, my buddy Keith, who was actually my coding instructor, I said, hey, can you come in and help and take a little bit more of like a CTO role? He did. He said, hey, look, Kotlin's not my thing. I know Ruby on Rails. I could jump in and code if I did that. So you know what? We rewrote the whole thing. It was early, you know, and I'd say like now we're like, oh, man, Ruby on Rails might not have been the right thing, but that's okay. You just iterate, you know, that's why I like software instead of buildings. You know, concrete is much harder to change and move than code. It costs money and it takes time, but you know, you go learning. And it was the first 3 years of Teal were gut wrenching. It was really hard. We could not crack the software. You know, we knew what people wanted, but it was another thing to build this like self-serve software. And I had taken some positions as like, we're never going to do that. And those were wrong. You know, like my simple learning there was we had built this kind of like CRM for your job search. People loved it. It was great. It is great. We still use it. We still have it. But just not enough. It was a nice to have, not a need to have. And I remember myself saying, we'll never build a resume building software. It's like, there's so many of those. That's such like red ocean. Why would we go into this like highly competitive? But you know what? That's also proved it was a real market. It was huge. 50 million resume queries on Google a month. And so then by talking to our users, wait a second, there's different pains here that these products are not solving. And I actually think there's like a wedge for us here. And let's build it in a way that corresponds to our broader vision for this thing that has longevity, that doesn't just create these bespoke one-off documents. And so we actually really thought of the resume as this very strategic data source that could lead to like much bigger, broader career implications. Because the resume is just a document. Really what's on there is your full career history. That's really valuable information.
Right.
That you can use as scaffolding for all sorts of very cool things. And so we took a different approach. We then leveraged the things we had already, this CRM. And, you know, I'd say we're now one of the top AI resume building softwares on the market. Because we sort of had to change our position. So I'm become a strong beliefs, loosely held person. And so you just got to be willing to change your mind and learn and listen to the market. And you just can't be too rigid about what you think is the right solution. Because at the end of the day, if the customers won't do it, sure, you could be like you'd be a broke and out of business genius. And I had no interest in being that.
Right. But I think it's fascinating because I think the important thing is just to get started and start building what you know today, but you know that you're going to evolve as you get more customers or your customer base grows. You're going to learn a lot, and a lot of it's the learning, looking at the data and looking at what people are using, the analytics, and adapting and like, you know, like you said, what you thought 3 years ago it may turn out that's the thing you're doing today, that type of thing, you know?
I tell people we have to earn the right to have that problem. Because a lot of people think, oh, well, let's go ahead and do it now. Because when it's like, we don't know that that's going to be a problem. Like, so many things could change. We could choose not to pursue that. The market could change. You know, I don't know. All the companies stop reading resumes. Who knows? So at these early stages, you really need to put blinders on and be very intentional and deliberate about how far of a time horizon you let yourself plan for. Because you could waste a tremendous amount of time and energy and then be wrong. And so it's also a way to sort of de-risk your bets if you just work in sort of smaller iterative bets and don't, because, you know, those things that you are planning for the company 5 years from now, well, they also take a long time to build because you're just accounting for all this wide range of possibilities. And so as you expand the scope or the aperture of possibilities, now you're expanding the amount of things you have to build. And say, you know what? Okay, we're just going to intentionally lower the aperture and say, yeah, we understand those might happen, and if they do, we'll tackle them then.
Yeah, very cool. And then of course, you know, and this probably illustrates the whole idea here is AI comes into the picture the last few years and becomes this huge thing, which you're uniquely positioned to leverage, which is a beautiful thing. And what's that impact? What did that look like when like ChatGPT 4 came out and the whole world just started to gravitate to AI and every new thing happening now, all the tools we use every day. You know, I mentioned ClickUp. I use ClickUp. They got AI. Everything's got AI now. How did that impact you?
So we launched what was still called Teal Plus. We had tried a bunch of different versions of business models and we could not get any of them to crack. And so eventually we just went back to the basics of a basic subscription. You know, we had tried this like affiliate models because I really didn't want to charge our user. I was like, oh, these are folks that, you know, there's consumers and consumers won't pay. And I was wrong. Consumers will pay. You just have to deliver a real value. You know, they won't pay for trash. So you got to like make something good. And it actually became the best litmus test for like, if they're paying, it's good. You know, so like we don't do a lot of surveys. If they don't pay or if they cancel right away, it's not good. You know, people willing to part with their money is proof that they think it's good and it's adding value to their life. So it actually, beyond just as a business model, became a great way to say, like, are we delivering on the promise? And then we can do some things. So there's all sorts of dark patterns. Like, you know, we added a weekly plan. Which is uncommon, right? Everyone's trying to sort of hide under your sort of when you sort your bills, where you chop and cancel. And so like, we're not going to do that. We're going to do a weekly plan so people can cancel whenever they want. Right when they check out, they can disable recurring, which no one does. You know, it's like, oh, we're just going to sort of hide there as a barnacle on your credit card. It's like right at the get-go. If you want to do it non-recurring and then set it to recurring later, no problem, right? Because those are all signals to us. If they then now go and recur, it's like they like it. They're getting value from it. So we use it as like, just like, are we delivering value? But we launched Teal Plus in November of 2019, and it had, you know, some features that were not sort of AI in the way that we know it today. And then it's funny, I saw a buddy of mine, Ben, post on LinkedIn that he was playing around with the OpenAI API. And this was over the holiday break, I believe, in 2019. So 2021. Sorry, I got my years all mixed up. I was like, wait, 2021. And because we're going on 3 years of it being, I have my years all messed up. Maybe it was 22. But anyways, it was right when it was like right when it was starting. I think ChatGPT came out about a year ago this November. A year before that, OpenAI's API was, I think it was like GPT-2 or maybe GPT-3 had just come out. And he posted on LinkedIn that he was playing around with the API and it was incredible. I was like, you know what? I'm savvy enough that I could dive in here. And so I jumped into the OpenAI playground and got an API key and started to make some like generative AI resume bullets. And I blew my mind. I was like, oh, this is way better than I thought it was. I just thought it was like trash because I've seen so much other technology produce garbage. And I was like, this is actually really good. And this was with I think it was the first release of GPT-3. Like you still had to get approved to get an API key. It was like hard. And I did it. And I immediately wrote our engineering team. I said, stop everything what we're doing. we need to add this to our product immediately. And in January of 2023, that date is accurate, almost 2 years ago, we started to add generative AI functionality. So generating resume bullets and professional summaries and all these things. This was before ChatGPT even came out.
Yeah,
I remember ChatGPT had just come out.
It was right around that time, yeah.
And so we incorporated it natively. We also leaned into it heavily. We said, you know what? This is how you could use ChatGPT to write a resume and bring it over to Teal. So we didn't say like, hey, don't use ChatGPT. We actually embraced it fully. We said rising tides lift all ships. Let's just get everybody aware of all the cool things you could do with AI. And we've always just taken a bit of like an abundance mindset to how we do these things. Like enough people have this problem. They're going to need all sorts of different tools. We'll just be one of the ones in the mix. And so we started to create a ton of content on how to use ChatGPT to write your resumes without even mentioning Teal. That stuff really took off. And then that, we just leaned in heavily and said, yeah, this is a game changer. Like it aligns with our mission, which is sort of level the playing field. We had never in our wildest dreams envisioned that we'd have these services. We thought we'd have to build all this stuff ourselves from scratch at some point, which I had no idea how we do. So for us, it's just been an absolute game changer and enabler, and puts us on the same playing field with other big companies that have these abilities.
Yeah, that's amazing though. That's bold. Like this is like the beginnings of that technology. Now, 2 years later, you're like, of course, everyone's doing this, and kind of even Apple's like they're like holding back. We'll let everyone else be first, but you were first. You were like you immediately saw this. This is a perfect fit for what our vision is for what we're doing. That's fantastic. So it's had a big impact on. And all that stuff you were doing manually before and helping and writing resumes and doing all this stuff. Now you have technology there that can do all that stuff for the people on your platform. So walk us through what somebody now, the user experience, like somebody wants to, they need a job. They're looking for a career or whatever. What is that kind of user experience for somebody now, and how does AI kind of bleed into that? I'm curious.
Yeah, so we're still filling in. There's a lot of the job search ended up being like far more complicated than I thought. I thought we were just like, oh yeah, we'll just like spend a year building some job search tools and we'll be done, and then we'll go on to like helping people get promoted and other stuff like when they're in the job. So the job search has taken us a bit longer because there's just so many facets to it. So we started. I'll do it chronologically. And sort of talk about, because then also talk about like the depth in the platform. So we started with this like CRM to help you manage the process. Because a lot of people, that's where they struggle. They apply to jobs and they don't even like put it anywhere. It's just in their inbox. They lose track of all the things they applied to. So we said, let's make something that helps you goes with you, and you can use any job board, because it'd be tricky for us to get all the jobs into one place, which now we have a solution for that. So we started with the Chrome extension that you could use to bookmark jobs across the internet and bring them all into Teal, and they would all be sort of visualized the same way. We would analyze them for you, and then we would help you walk through your process, like if you were using HubSpot or Salesforce.com or something. Then we said, okay, that's great. That's helping people. Now we got to help them. I also think about the job search as like what you control and what you don't. And so everything up until you submit the application, you control. You control the jobs you look for. You control the jobs you apply to. You control how you write your resume. So we said, let's focus on that part. So then we started to work on the resume, which is a real pain for people. And historically, you would just make one resume and send the same thing to a lot of people. But companies' requirements are getting more and more specific. People's experiences are getting more and more vast. And so I said, well, you really need to show the 10% of you that's 100% relevant to the company. And what a lot of people would do is just like write this resume that was like a generic version of the kitchen sink and be like, well, they'll just pick the things that are relevant to them. And people won't do that. So we used AI to help you tailor a view of you that was relative to the JD, because we already had all the JDs ingested. And so we've worked a lot on the building out a career history that kind of just cherry picks the relevant stuff. And that's our resume builder that's had a whole bunch. It's got generative AI. It writes a cover letter for you. It does all sorts of really cool things like that. Then we said, well, then they got to submit the application, and that's annoying. So our Chrome extension will help you use AI in your career history to fill out the applications. There are companies that will do that for you while you sleep. I just philosophically disagree with that. I think it sort of pollutes the system and is not helpful for people, and there needs to be a little bit more rigor. So, but I do think like typing out all those forms is annoying. So we do help people with that process and putting their best foot forward. Then we said, okay, now we need to start to expand it, and so we need to help people find the jobs. That's annoying, and and jobs themselves are, all of the job boards are advertising platforms at the end of the day. And I said, well, we're on the side of the consumer. We don't have to worry about that. Let's make it our responsibility to go find every job under the sun, whether a company is paying us or not, or always not, because that's what we're going to. So we've now built a job search engine where we go out and index jobs and can surface those for people. And most recently, we launched an AI interview coach. So using all the information that's in the platform already, you can launch a voice-assisted AI interview that will do voice simulations, so you can practice an interview.
Very cool. That's awesome.
And then, yes, that's awesome. That's great, because that's really hard to rehearse and ask a friend to take the time to interview you. So it's a great use case for AI, and it's the first introduction of voice into the platform, which is very cool. And then now the next thing to round out the job search, we're going to use all the jobs in your job tracker to give you a market analysis of what are the comp ranges and benefits to help you negotiate better. So we're super focused on rounding out the job search and having all the functionality there. Oh, and we're building an AI negotiation coach. So you will upload your offer letter. It will use all the data in our platform to help you negotiate and what to ask for and what to look for. And then in the new year, we'll start to do things like first 90 days and helping you succeed at the job. But by the end of this year, we'll have very good coverage on all aspects of the job search.
That's fantastic. So I feel like you're achieving your goal of doing good and you're doing well. So is your user base growing? You're getting the word out. You're on a good trajectory.
Yeah, we've had a total, I think in the last, so in the first 3 years, we had 100,000 people sign up for Teal total. And in the last 2 years, we've had 1.9 million people sign up for Teal. So we're at about 2 million people ever. We've had 100,000 people pay for Teal Plus. So, obviously it's for job search, and we make it easy for them to unsubscribe when they're done. A lot of them, continue to pay us. And the value in the platform, we just introduced a yearly plan, and people are subscribing to it. So they're seeing value beyond just the job search and the tools we have today. But that's been our core focus. So 100,000 people have seen enough value globally to pull out their credit card and pay. And some for well over a year, for various reasons, because they're being super intentional. A lot of our users are employed and looking, a lot of people also like to think that all the job seekers are unemployed. That's just empirically untrue. The majority of job seekers actually are employed and looking to grow. They're stagnant, or they're worried about the company, or who knows what. Of course, we have unemployed job seekers as well, and a lot of the platform is free. I'd say 90% of the functionality is free. Another thing we said is we want anyone to be, from any walk of life, to be able to run a job search for free. But we need to be a business that makes money, so we gate some of the functionality. We give it away all the time if someone's experiencing hardship. But, we've had 100,000 people globally. It's about 60% is in the U.S., but 40% is all over the world. And
that's
so
even cooler.
It's very similar. There's a couple nuances, but it's very similar all over the world. In English, our focus is English speaking. We haven't internationalized the product in that sense yet. But yeah, we've had, we will do, a little over $4 million in revenue this year. We're not profitable yet. We're not trying to be, given that we've got fantastic investors, we've raised more money. And so we've got the resources to continue to invest in the product and innovation. But if we did need to be profitable, we could be. There's a version of this business that could be profitable. So I think we've crossed some of these thresholds that does allow this business to do good and do well. But again, luckily we have great investors that are supporting us to take this thing to be the big company we all, believe it can be.
It sounds amazing. It makes me want to go search for a job. I think we'll land on this. I think one of the things, you just, watch the news or read the news or whatever you do, or just, what's going on out there in the world right now. It sounds like it's really hard to find a job now. I mean, and as an employer, you get like hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of applications when you put a job post out there. Do you think that kind of your solution here with the ability to automate a lot of this and help people is kind of maybe one of the answers to that is to kind of help filter that?
Absolutely. Look, it's a competitive market, and I think you need to do all the things you can to stand out. But I caution people against easy buttons, right? Like look for the things that are non-productive or non-good uses of your time, but also don't be lazy. The world still rewards effort. It's got to be the right kind of effort, and well-directed effort. But what's happening with AI is you're seeing a lot of people being able to produce good enough results with minimal effort, but also all of our radars for it are getting better. So the person reading it can be and you're seeing sort of cynicism go up. And so we really look down on laziness. I think especially when you're looking to hire someone, you're like, I don't want to hire lazy people.
Right.
And so if you're signaling laziness, you have to be very careful, because I think we're getting, more and more sort of sensitive to that. Because there's a lot of people that do want to work and are willing to work hard. And there's also a lot of fear mongering in the narrative of this generation or that generation unwilling to work, and, whatever, whether true or not true. I just think that, making a bad hire is also super expensive. And so, in a market where you have more optionality and there's really good talent out there, and you're getting tons of applicants, you need to figure out a way to stand out in that very crowded market. And so AI can definitely help, but it's not the silver bullet. You need to do more. You do need to network. You do need to maintain those relationships. You do need to make a great resume. If we go back 2-3 years ago, you could kind of, if you're an engineer and you just toss an application in, you would probably get an interview. Not today. And so I think also people have to recalibrate that, and that was, I think, that wasn't the new normal. That was just a moment in time. And getting a job was never easy. It just became sort of easy for a little bit. And so I think we're getting back to normal. And so leverage all the tooling you can, but also, put in the effort and do all the things. People also like to talk about job search advice in a series of ors. Make a nice resume or network. It's an and. Right? You want to lose weight and be healthy, you got to eat well and go to the gym. It's not just,
Love that.
So
Love that. Yeah.
You got to do and just think about, stack the ands. You can't do everything, but prioritize them, stack the ones that you think are best suited for you. If you're super introverted and, networking really gives you the heebie-jeebies, that's okay. Find another thing. But it's not just applying online with a great resume. You do have to do more in this market.
Great advice. Well, thank you for sharing the story and how you built this thing. And it's very inspiring. It's very, very, very cool how you did all this. And it seems like you are on a good trajectory to do amazing things, to do good and do well. So good job. Thanks, Dave. It. You betcha. Until next time, take care.
All right, take it easy. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Builders Podcast. One more quick note about our sponsors. At Unified Web Design, we're passionate about doing better together, partnering with agencies and businesses to deliver exceptional web design, development, and ongoing support. And Unified Plugins offers tools to take your WordPress projects to the next level, helping you build beautiful websites, enhance functionality, and drive more conversions. If you haven't already, subscribe or follow to stay updated on future episodes. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, sharing it with somebody who might benefit helps us grow this amazing community. Until next time, keep building with intention and creativity.